Hi guys, welcome to another video. This is our last video for this topic on legislation. Remember, we've already covered 6 of the 8 acts that are found in this topic. And today we are looking at the last 2. If you're one of those people who are not sure which one is National Credit Act and which one is Consumer Protection Act, this is just the video for you. I'm the General and this is the Masterclass. Okay, guys, so let me start off by reminding you of how we always start every topic. We have to start by looking at the exam guideline. Like I always say, the exam guideline is what shows us what we can expect, what will be asked, and what we are supposed to know. So you must make sure you always use this exam guideline at the beginning and also at the end as a checklist to ensure that you've covered everything you need to. Then let's look at the National Credit Act itself. What is the National Credit Act about? So the National Credit Act, guys, is the act that regulates all credit transactions. Keyword there, credit transactions. So if it's a cash transaction, it's not covered under the National Credit Act. It covers only credit transactions. So the purpose is it promotes responsible granting of credit. So there is a way credit is supposed to be given, guys. There is a process to be followed. You actually have to be checked with what is called an affordability assessment so that the credit provider can check if this person who is asking for credit is actually credit worthy, because we may end up putting people in debt that they will not be able to pay. So the National Credit Act is there to protect both the businesses from people that may not service their debt well, people that will default from paying their debts, as well as protect credit consumers from businesses that may seek to take advantage of customers. So it lays a framework for how credit transactions should be conducted in South Africa. Number 2, protects financial interests of consumers. So it is there to make sure that consumers are not taken advantage of by businesses. Let's look at the impact, which is positives and negatives. Number 1, protection against non-paying customers. So this is to the business now. The business is protected from non-paying customers because there are people that have a habit of taking credit that they cannot service, that they probably don't even qualify for, and then they have different ways of running away. So at least the National Credit Act gives the businesses legal recourse through debt collectors and things like that to be able to follow through and recoup some of that money. We go to the next one, more customers through credit sales. So this is just basic maths, guys. If you're selling cash only, if you are selling your items for cash only, you can only get customers who have the cash to pay right now. But if you open up the market and say, even if you don't have cash, you can buy on credit and pay later, then you are bound to have more sales. So this is the system we use in South Africa. People can buy things today and pay them later. So businesses will end up having more sales because of credit. Negative impact, complex and expensive debt collection procedures. So these procedures that the businesses have to undertake in order to recoup their money that might have been lost or that is not being paid back by credit consumers is a tedious process. It cannot be done willy-nilly. It has so many procedures and it is very expensive, which derails the business from its core business. The next one is blacklisting is a last resort. So businesses cannot say, if you don't pay, I'll blacklist you, because blacklisting is the last thing. You have to have followed every avenue before you can blacklist someone. That becomes the final avenue if everything else has failed. Then we go to actions regarded as non-compliance. Number 1, engaging in discriminatory practices. So remember, with every act, we always look at it against the backdrop of apartheid. So under apartheid, black people were not afforded the same rights as white people. So you would find that black people would not have these opportunities to get credit and so forth for their businesses or even just to buy products. So this should not continue in modern day South Africa, whereby somebody is discriminated against based on their race or on their gender. It should only be based on affordability. So there should not be any discrimination at all. Number 2, granting of credit recklessly. So some businesses and some banks have been accused of this. It has even been taken to court to say they were granting credit recklessly without checking properly and so forth. This is very important. Before anyone can be given credit, before anyone can be allowed to buy goods or services on credit, they should be checked through an affordability assessment that is done with the credit bureau to check their credit worthiness, whether or not they have handled debt well in the past, and exactly how much can they be given at a time. Then what happens to those who don't comply? So we look at the consequences for non-compliance. Number one, the NCR may impose a fine. What is the NCR? The NCR is an institution that is formed under the auspices of the National Credit Act. Is the National Credit Regulator. Because remember, the Act is not a body, it's a law. It's not a body, it cannot enforce itself. So the National Credit Regulator is the statutory body that makes sure that the National Credit Act is followed. So every business that wants to offer credit services must apply and must be given accreditation by the National Credit Regulator. So this National Credit Regulator is responsible for checking that everything that these businesses do checks out according to the National Credit Act. So if they don't do that, then one of the things is the National Credit Regulator can impose a fine. What is the other consequence? Number two, the business license may be revoked. So this is more dangerous even. The business license that allows them to operate in South Africa may be revoked, which means that they will no longer be allowed to operate the way they've been operating, which means everything goes to a standstill. So this is one of the major things that can happen to businesses that do not comply. Then ways in which businesses can comply. Number one is to conduct credit checks. Like I said, every customer that walks through the doors of a business asking for credit must be checked. If they qualify, they are given the credit. If they don't qualify, they are not given the credit. Fair and square. Register with the National Credit Regulator. Like I said, every business has to be registered with the National Credit Regulator, and they are given a certificate that they must display maybe in the reception area or somewhere where the public can be able to ascertain that yes, this business is registered with the National Credit Regulator. Then we also have special aspects. Remember, I told you that with every act we have 5 things that we look at. Now we've looked at those 5, and for this National Credit Act, we have a 6th one, the special aspect, which is the rights of consumers. Hi guys, sorry to disturb your video. I'm just here to discuss with you 3 ways in which you can support the channel. Number one is to watch the ads. So guys, the ads that come before the video, during the video, and after the video are linked to this particular video that you are watching. So if you don't skip the ads and you actually watch, we're going to be rewarded by the advertisers. Then number 2 is to invite me as a guest speaker to your event at your school, a school function, prize giving day, revision classes, and so on. I'll gladly come. All the information you need is in the description box below. Number 3 is the Masterclass tour. So this year I will be visiting you. I'll be coming to a city near you. Come and join us for revision classes, exam preparation classes, and so on. All the information will be shared on this channel. Now let's get back to the video. Rights of consumers in terms of the National Credit Act. Number 1. Consumers of credit have the right to apply for credit and to be free from discrimination. So we have already spoken about this one, that everybody is free to apply and should be given reasons why they have been declined, where they have been declined, to ensure that this is not based on race, gender, or any other diversity issue. Then obtain reasons for credit being refused. So that's what I just mentioned now. Receive protection of their personal information. So the information that consumers of credit give to credit providers when they are applying is sensitive and personal. So credit providers should never pass this information on to any other body for money or for any other reason. Receive pre-agreement documentation. The customers must be given documents that they can look at and study them to see if they want to go ahead with the deal or not. Fair and responsible credit marketing. So there must not be exaggeration of the credit terms or even of the products and so on. The credit provider must always be truthful. The marketing must always be fair and responsible. Receive information in plain and understandable language. So in South Africa, we have 12 official languages, and each customer is free to request for any of the copies in a language that they understand, because there is no point in giving somebody a contract to read and understand and then sign in a language that they don't understand. Receive documentation as required by the NCA. So each of the customers that applies for this must be given their own documents, their own copy. You are supposed to be given your own copy of the credit agreement so that you can read it at home. You can regularly review and see the terms and conditions that you agreed to. And this is also important to ensure that nobody changes the contract and then comes up with another copy, because that copy would not be signed. So you need to maintain your own copy, which is signed. Access and challenge credit records and information held by the credit bureau. So the credit bureau hosts all the records of credit in South Africa. Any credit transaction is supposedly recorded there. It's supposed to be recorded there by the credit providers. So when a person is checked, what the credit provider basically does is to access that credit bureau to check for the history, the credit history of that particular person, to ascertain their credit worthiness. Now, these records may not be up to date. Maybe somebody has paid off something, but it's not appearing there. So the right of the credit consumer here is to be able to challenge those findings from the credit bureau and say, this is not correct. I have paid this and that, or my credit score is supposed to be better than this. So every consumer has the right to challenge those credit records. Return goods to the credit provider to settle the outstanding debt. So in the event that a consumer took goods and they are no longer able to pay them, they can return the goods as part payment for those same goods to cover their debt, and then they will be absolved of their debt. Apply for debt review if the consumers cannot afford to repay their debt. So if a mistake happened at the point of being granted credit and somebody was given credit that they cannot pay, or maybe somebody has lost their job and so forth, and they now find themselves overwhelmed in debt, there is a debt review process, a debt counseling procedure, which is offered by the National Credit Act. Anyone who is drowning in debt can apply for this, and then the debt counselors will take over and try to get them back on their feet again financially. Receive protection from being held accountable for the use of their credit facility after they reported the theft. So we know in South Africa, guys, identity theft is prevalent. Somebody can steal your documents and go and take credit in your name. So your responsibility as a credit consumer is to go and report that to the police, report that documents have been stolen and so on. There's suspicious activity on the account. Then any goods that are taken on credit after you have reported, they are not under your name, then refuse a credit limit increase. So credit providers will tell you if you've been paying well, they will regularly update you and say, hey, you qualify for a credit limit increase. You could be taking credit of up to this amount and that amount. Now, every credit consumer has the right to refuse that credit limit increase. It cannot be automatic. Right, let's move on to the Consumer Protection Act, which is the other half of this video. So what do we mean by Consumer Protection Act? Now, this one covers all types of transactions and all types of consumers, meaning that even businesses, because they also buy from other businesses, are also part of the supply chain and can also be treated as customers. Let's start with the purpose. Number one, it promotes responsible consumer behavior. So the purpose of the Act is to put out as much information as possible in the public domain to ensure that people do not engage in irresponsible consumer behavior whereby they end up buying things they don't want and so on. Then the next one is it promotes consumer protection. Now, consumers have been taken for a ride for a long time by big corporations because people usually don't know their rights. So the Consumer Protection Act is there to empower the consumer so that they know as much of their rights as possible so that they can defend themselves in the marketplace. Let's look at the positives. NCC allows disputes to be resolved. What is the NCC? So just like we have the NCR under the NCA, we also have the NCC under the CPA. The NCC is the National Consumer Council. So this National Consumer Council hears all the disputes between the buyer and the seller, and they resolve those disputes. It improves the image of the business. So any business which is seen to be following the right principles, it is respecting the rights of consumers, will obviously have a good image from that. The negative impact: implementation procedures are time consuming, prescriptive, and expensive. So applying all these things that are required by the Consumer Protection Act requires a lot of money, time, and effort from the business, which may take away from the core business that they are here for. Then they may lose competitive advantage because now you are spending so much time instead of investing in productive capacity. You are busy trying to please customers, you are taking returns left, right, and center, and so forth, and you may lose your competitive edge. Actions regarded as non-compliance: charging different prices for the same goods. So guys, if you buy from a McDonald's in Durban and a McDonald's in Joburg, if you are buying the same item, the price must be the same. Businesses are not allowed to price discriminate. They are not allowed to charge one price in one area and then increase the price or decrease it in another area. The price and the good must be the same everywhere. Refusing to provide information to customers. So one of the rights that consumers have is the right to information. So no information can be withheld about products, about the business, can be withheld from the consumer. They can have as much information as they like about the product. It is their right. No such information can be withheld from them. Consequences for non-compliance: businesses that don't do this may suffer the following: may receive a compliance order. So we have seen a compliance order in the other acts. This is a forceful letter that is demanding a particular action to be done by the business, or else they will face the law. Then the license may be revoked. We spoke about this under National Credit Act, that every business needs a license for it to operate in South Africa. If that license is revoked, it means the business can no longer operate and people will lose their jobs. The business will not be able to supply the products anymore, and so on. So this will have massive repercussions for the business. Ways in which businesses can comply. Number one, allow a 5-day cooling off period. So every consumer must be allowed 5 days after a purchase to think about whether they've made a good purchase or not. Because some people will buy from impulse. We call that impulse buying. Maybe they just received a bonus and then they feel the urge to spend the money. But later on, upon getting home, they realize there was no need for this. They must be given a 5-day cooling off period whereby they can bring back the goods and return them and get back their money without any questions asked. Then disclose sales prices. So the prices of all the products must be available. They must not even have to be asked for. Each item must be attached with its own price. It is the right of the customers. Then, like I said, when we look at any act, we always look at these 5 areas, and for some acts, there are special effects. And for Consumer Protection Act, we do have a special effect, which is also rise of consumers under the Consumer Protection Act. But before we can look at that, thank you so much for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed, I'd like to encourage you to subscribe. We are on the road to 5,000 subscribers. Please help us to reach this milestone by the end of February. Share this information in the school groups, with your cousins, with your friends, and so on. Thank you for your support. Now, let's look at the rights of consumers under the Consumer Protection Act. Number one, the right to choose. So each consumer has the right to choose. What do we mean by that? Consumers have the right to choose suppliers in goods and services, the right to shop around for the best prices and then make informed choices, return goods that are unsafe, defective for a full refund, request written quotations and cost estimates. So guys, before you buy, you want to shop around, you want to be able to compare prices. So you want to get a quotation here, a quotation there, compare. So every business is supposed to allow you to do this. You have the right to shop around. Nobody must make you feel bad if you ask for the price and leave, because it's your right to compare prices before you buy. The second one is the right to fair and honest dealings. Suppliers may not give misleading, false information to consumers. Suppliers may not use physical force or harass consumers to buy products. as we know, guys, sometimes when you're walking in Joburg or in Pretoria, there are these guys that are singing outside with a microphone and they are pulling you this way and that way. That is against the rights. They should not physically force you into a particular action to buy. The next one is businesses may not overbook or oversell goods or services and then dishonor the agreement. So if you have booked, it's as good as done. The business cannot come back to you and tell you that they double booked. Businesses may not promote pyramid schemes and chain letter schemes. So they must not promise people that if you bring so many people, you are going to get this and that. We go to the next one, the right to information about products and agreements, or the right to disclosure and information. Businesses must ensure that contracts or agreements should be in a plain language. We spoke about this, that is simple and easy to understand. They must label products and trade descriptions accurately, display prices that are fully inclusive and disclosing of all costs. Charge consumers a lower price if the two different prices for the same product are displayed. So if it happens that you are in a shop, then there are two prices marked, maybe on the product and on the shelf. The business must give you that product at a cheaper one because it was their fault in the first place to have displayed two prices. The next one is the right to fair, responsible marketing and promotion. Businesses should disclose all information related to the country of origin, expiry dates, ingredients of the products. Consumers may cancel purchases made through direct marketing within 5 working days. That is that cooling off period we spoke about. Businesses should not deliberately mislead consumers on pricing, benefits, or uses of goods because that will be considered deceptive. Businesses should conduct marketing of business activities in a responsible manner that complies with guidelines as outlined in the CPA. So basically, businesses must not do false advertising. They must not give people information that is not correct. The next one, right to accountability from suppliers. Businesses should honor credit vouchers and prepaid services. Suppliers in possession of any prepaid certificates or credit vouchers must not treat such property as theirs and must exercise care or diligence and skill and assume liability for any losses suffered by consumers in this regard. So here we're basically saying if you've got a voucher that you got from a particular shop, they cannot refuse it. They must honor their own vouchers. Consumers have the right to be protected in lay-by agreements. Suppliers must supply equivalent or superior products or offer a full refund with interest if goods in the lay-by are not provided by the business. So guys, you know that when you buy something through lay-by, you pay for it bit by bit and the business is supposed to set it aside and no longer display it. So if it happens that the product you were paying for is no longer available, they must either give you that same product or a superior one or give you a full refund with interest. The next one is the right to fair, just, reasonable terms and conditions. Consumers have the right to protection against unfair, unreasonable, or unjust contract terms. They have the right to approach the court to ensure fair and just conduct, terms, and conditions. Businesses should provide consumers with written notices of clauses that may limit consumer rights. Businesses may not market or sell goods at unfair prices to consumers. So here we are saying, for example, every consumer has the right to return goods if they are defective or if they are not the right size. But this may not apply to something like electrical appliances or to underwear. So the business must actually notify consumers before they buy that if you buy such and such a product, this particular right will not apply because of this and that. The last one, right to equality in the consumer marketplace. Businesses may not charge different prices for the same goods or services. We spoke about this. Businesses should not discriminate against any group of consumers when marketing their products and services in different areas. So even during adverts, there must not be a gender, a race that looks to be attacked in that particular advert. It must always be responsible, no discrimination. Businesses should not limit access to goods and services in the consumer market. Businesses may not, under any circumstance, vary the quality of their goods to different consumers, as this is discriminatory. So these are the rights under the Consumer Protection Act. For more information on the other acts not covered in this video, watch this video right here. God bless you. I'll see you next time.